Can you see my screen? Can you hear me well?
Yes, all well, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So good morning once again. My name is Stefka Domuzova. I am Space Earth Observation Orchestrator at EIT ClimateKick, and together with my colleague Tan Tamle, we would be presenting you today our ideas and suggestions on how to identify and structure your demand for climate services. And what we will delve in more particularly is the climate services when it comes down to building and developing, and especially co-developing climate resilient water solutions. A bit more of the objectives at this call. These are some of the questions we would tackle. I would certainly not promise you that we would answer them all. We will try to answer some of them, and for some of them we will try to at least provide you with some input to think by yourself. So we would go through water climate services and why is it important to know water climate services, what is the role of pre-commercial procurement in the development of climate services, and in specifics, what is the role of resilient water solutions in addressing climate changes, how are these prioritized by different regional authorities across Europe, and we will delve in a bit more second part of this webinar, which will take form of discussion around how is awareness distributed around awareness about the risks and the benefits that are provided from water solutions how this awareness distributed within the different organizations, and which pain points we could spot and how we can maybe improve them in order to better structure the demand. Before going into that, for those of you that are not very familiar with us, I would spend a couple of minutes to tell you more about the Protect project that we are here to represent today. Protect is a Horizon Europe project. Its scope is to raise awareness and build capacity around the use of pre-commercial procurement for the co-development of climate services. And while the project is rather open and we provide capacity building and awareness raising more in general, the specific reason of the existence of the project is an upcoming call, which you can already find in the funding and tenders portal. Maybe some of my colleagues would be able to share a link, otherwise we could do that later. That is for the European Commission and who is expected to fund up to 19 million for the co-development of climate services under pre-commercial procurement. The call is already online. It opens in about a month and it closes in February, in case you're interested to have a look at that. So what we have been doing in Protect in our research that has to do with climate services, Earth observation, pre-commercial procurement, and how these interconnect, we have come to, after very broad discussions with public procurers, we have come down to narrow the potential PCPs to 4 different challenges. One of them, as you can see, is climate resilient water solutions. The other fall a little bit in different fields, although we do have flood mapping and prediction, which indeed can be related to what we do here. So for those of you who don't know what PCP or pre-commercial procurement is, I am not really going to explain that. I saw that we have excellent experts in the audience, so maybe they can contribute if they think it's necessary, but I would like to spend a minute to tell you what are the benefits of pre-commercial procurement. So this is a scheme that more or less tells you what you probably need to know at this stage about pre-commercial procurement. What is the most important thing, I think, is that it's a competitive development in phases, which means that there's a group of procurers and that there are different solution developers, and as the stages go on and as the solution matures more with each stage, let's say that some of them drop out, because then at some point there will be a mismatch, or some other solutions will be preferred by the procurers over their solutions. So these are the 3 principles that the EC likes to use to explain pre-commercial procurement. That's the competitive development in phases, which is that there's the risk benefit sharing under market conditions, and this is And there is the separation from deployment of commercial volumes of end products and services. So what this means is that the benefits of pre-commercial procurement are, on the one hand, for the, let's say, the procurers, the public or private authority that is procuring that, it is they can benefit from, in a way, a co-development ad hoc process. So they can, with each phase, use more explicitly and elaborate further their needs for climate services. So PCP is typically something that is used in highly technical fields when, for instance, the procurers don't have the capacity to the technical capacity to put up the tender specifications because, for instance, they don't know how to make an Earth observation-based solution in the fields of water monitoring, for example. And that's it. And the benefit for the competitors, so for the developers of the solutions, are several, namely that pre-commercial procurement is focused on a rather early stage of TRL. So we are talking about solutions between TRL 3 and 7, which means that they have a not that common opportunity to get some funding for an early stage development of their solutions. Then also I believe that intellectual property, it remains with them. However, what is important to know is that while the pre-commercial procurement is funding the development, well, in this case, the procurer would be funding that, or in the case of the Protect that would be put up by the Commission, it will be the European Commission funding the development. The procurer at the end is not obliged to buy the solution, even though they are obliged to fund the development. I hope that's clear. So we'll move on a little bit further. This is where we are today. One of the activities that we do for this triangular of raising awareness between the intersections of pre-commercial procurement, Earth observation, and climate services has come down to these autumn sessions of training webinars and workshops. Today we are here talking about climate resilient water solutions, and we have a few more coming, and we already had a few more left. I'll come back to this slide at the end of the presentation, so don't hesitate to join us more if you have more sectorial interests. So let's talk a little bit about optimizing the demand for climate services, and first of all about climate services. So what are climate services, and why is it important to know what climate services are? Now, let's say that the answer depends, depending on who do you ask. There are several equally reputable definitions of climate services, and it's not that easy to draw a line between what is climate service and what is not. What we very often base ourselves on is the definition contained in the 2015 European Roadmap for Climate Services by the European Commission. And it identifies several elements to know if something is a climate service. So first of all, it is based on climate data, even though the definition itself mentions that very often this climate data is merged together with non-climate data. Very often it's socioeconomic or other type of data. The climate service often can take the shape of projections, predictions, forecasts, applications, but even something, let's say, more analog, like a report or counseling or best practices. And what is very important is that it is designed to serve the society at large, which means that it should allow a vast category of end users to benefit from it directly or indirectly. So this is what you should know about climate services. And why you should know that is because, well, we need to know the market. If you're a public procurer and you want to go to the market, you need to know what is the market. You need to know what are the solutions that the market is offering you in order for you to know if the solution that you're interested is already there and you can buy it, or if it's not interested, so you can maybe fund the development of it through, for example, pre-commercial procurement. But at the same time, even if you are a service developer, for instance, it's always good to know the market, to know your competitors, to know the development of the market, and so on and so forth. How can one know the market? Well, as I said, it's very complicated to know what is the market, what is a climate solution, and what is not. So there are different definitions, and there are different taxonomies of climate services. This process have been in a way improving, because a lot of the taxonomies of climate services earlier were based on the supply, and now more and more they're shift towards having a look at the demand of climate services and base their categories based on the demand of climate services. So this is the case with more recent taxonomies. And talking about taxonomies, I'm showing you an extract of the PROTECT taxonomy of climate services. So this is a taxonomy that we created under the PROTECT project. It is a taxonomy that is based on comparing and extracting from other taxonomies of climate services or Earth observation based climate services, where the goal was indeed to find to list the services that fall into the scope of PROTECT, that are climate services and that use Earth observation. So here is, for instance, an extract from it. The whole taxonomy you could find at the community management platform of PROTECT. If you're a member, if you're not a member, please let us know. You need to be registered. It's but otherwise the access to it is completely free. We just need you to register with your email. So these are some of the water-related climate services that are part of the taxonomies. As you can see, some of them are more pertinent to water than others. For instance, we have a climate modeling for drinking water, then we have pollution monitoring, we have snow and ice and precision irrigation. But what is interesting is to have a look at it all together and see that there are some of them that are not maybe the first thing that we think of when we think of climate service, of water-related climate services. And I would like to invite you a little bit to think of that and to reflect on that also throughout the next slides. And mostly what we want to highlight here is how different water-related climate services, same as other climate services, very often should be approached maybe in a more systematic manner than just having one solution providing for one specific problem and not looking at what's happening around as a consequences from this problem or from amplifying the solution. So this is also evident here. What you see here is an extract from another research that has been done under PROTECT. And it consisted of going through the official documents produced by all of the European regions in more than 10 European countries, especially in adaptation strategies. And what we can see here is that that water-related, the way we wanted to look at what are these problems, which means how are these perceived by the regions themselves and how are they prioritized and what do they relate to. So in doing that, we did realize that there's a lot of them come indeed in marine and coastal, but also again less traditional domains, like for instance some, as you can see, many countries are concerned in their regional adaptations plans by for instance, the increased frequency that droughts and heat waves can have on the energy supply, on the urban life, and very strongly and in many different applications in the field of agriculture. All this to say that there are a lot of stakeholders when we talk about water-based services. If we talk about fresh water or any type of water, it can be difficult to calibrate and take into account the interest of all the relevant stakeholders whose needs need indeed to be taken into account. So, for instance, when our colleagues were in charge of forming the particular challenges for the pre-commercial procurement, what came up was the lack of integrated water solutions, especially for the demand of fresh water, and it was based on the fact that there is really lack of connection between the supply and the demand. That there are many different stakeholders that are connected and whose connection with the water supply is regulated, but they don't talk to each other. They don't necessarily literally use the same common terminological language, but also their systems are very often not interconnected, even if we're talking about using part of the same limited resource. These are some of the solutions that that we want to go to, and some ways that have been identified to do that. And they start from gaining a comprehensive understanding of the status quo, which would start from even mapping all of the stakeholders that can have access, in this case, to the freshwater supply, which is not necessarily something that has been done comprehensively throughout, down to providing some data, technical analysis, and to ideally reaching a situation where we have a predictable demand for fresh water. This means that we need to have an integrated system that could enable decision making. We need to have supply and demand systems that are predictable considering the demand of a diverse multitude of users. And last but not least, we should do that keeping in mind that different groups of users may have different requirements when it comes down, for instance, to water conditions or water quality. I think now we can pass through to the interactive session of our talk. I don't know if maybe it's a good time to maybe have a small round table, and I'll pass the floor to my colleague Tan Samle from Climate Kick, and I'll probably leave the decision to him. Thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them now or anytime throughout. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefka. And as Stefka said, my name is Tan Samle. I'm working for EIT Climate Kick, and I've been working for more than 10 years now, especially on climate-related innovation, both on mitigation and now increasingly on the adaptation side, and directing our activities across France and the Mediterranean, and also focusing a lot on systems transformation at regional scales. So as Stefka said, in fact, we and that was a question from Christophe Dalla at the beginning of the call about the number of participants. So that's always something we don't have the control on, which is that quite a few people register and then they decide to turn in or not. But I think it's we're a sufficiently small number, fortunately and unfortunately, to do a small roundtable indeed, just to know where we're speaking from. But before we do that, I can maybe just do the transition to what the approach we are taking in this series of webinars. So it's there is no, miracle solution to formulate the demand, and especially on a topic that has the complexities that Stefka outlined. But I think the point is really that if pre-commercial procurement is considered relevant for this topic of climate services, it's because it's a prime example of a situation where the demand and the supply sides really need to be engaging in a dialogue, because none of them independently is really capable of defining what needs are and how the supplies address the demand. So it's something that may be very familiar to you if you're working on this topic, but that's something that has been really documented by a number of projects. So one of them is the H2020 Marco project to assess the potential and the current state of the climate services market in Europe, and another one is EU Max, which was more talking to the barriers of this market. And it's really amazing to see how the climate service domain, and that goes for the water topic, but for many other topics as well, looks massively different whether you're looking at it from the provider side, which is very often quite close to the observation data space, to also the data space in general, and to technologies, or you look at it from the angle of the potential user. And when I say potential user, it's sometimes people who do take an interest and know that they would like to use more climate services, but just struggle to connect them with their actual needs. And it's even more for the latent demand. So a number of organizations and services who should be using this kind of information, but just don't have the idea that it could be relevant to their needs. So in fact, there is a whole part of the work, which of course is about exploring the solutions and seeing what is available and what is the state of development, etc., etc. But there is an important part of this exercise that needs to be around making sure that we understand the demand properly. And when I say we, it's not we as a consortium, but it's the procuring organizations, that they do understand fully their demands, that they don't leave less obvious aspects of the demand untapped. And also that they can formulate it within organizations and across procuring organizations in Europe in ways that are consistent, that let's say group similar needs and challenges in common terminology, and that this can be used to create critical mass to the supply side of the market. Then we engage, of course, in this dialogue between demand and supply that is at the core of the PCP process. So this is to say today, and in this series of webinars, we are focusing more on exploring this demand a bit further, and making sure that that each of the organizations who are engaging in this process are really making the best of the process by understanding the demand properly. So let's spend this couple of minutes to do a roundtable just to know who is in the room. And if you are a procurer, of course, please say so. But if you are not a procurer, but you are working or you have been working a lot with procurers, it's also very valuable to have your experience and understanding on board, because that helps shaping this understanding and the mapping of the demand. So can I start with you, Ana Lucia? I know you, but I'm not sure everybody in the room knows you.
Hi, Tantam. Good morning with everybody. My name is Ana Lucia Jaramillo, and I'm part of the legal team of Corvers. I'm happy to start the discussion. So there was any question in particular that you want to ask me, Tantam?
I think there's a series of questions coming behind, but and your expertise will be very much valued in that.
Willing to participate.
Yes, please, yes. Christophe Deller, can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, Christoph here from EOMAP company. We are a solution provider, so to say, for climate change data. And the reason why I'm here today is that I really wanted to check is what I consider climate change data is what you consider climate change data. And this is maybe something we can address later on, because I feel that the slides that Stefka presented are good in terms of a general overview, but when it comes down to very particular solutions, the match between a provider and a potential buyer is harder to get than it looks like when you consider these slides. You know what I mean? So talking about very specific innovational things, then you really need to have a good match. So it was interesting for me to understand how this whole structure works.
So thank you very much, because I think that's the core of the challenge. And so I mean, we're not going to necessarily bring the answer to that, but I think it's very important that we reflect on that together, and also we capture your experience of how you've been struggling with that, because that's the core.
No, but I don't expect you to deliver that answer, but I just want to understand how my thinking on this whole procurement processes fits in what the communities think about that.
But that's perfect. I think that's exactly one of the core topics we have to deal with. Yes, Ana Lucia.
Yeah, even May, I think that what you mentioned, Christoph, is really important. That's why we're thinking about demand-driven innovation. So, okay, the public buyers, they're telling you what they actually need and, provide certain specifications on functionalities they really need. But perhaps you have a service, but it does not completely fit into what they want, into their processes, and in the relationship in cooperation with other, let's say, in the value chain. So that's why it's so important, and that's what we try to do from innovation procurement, to have these needs assessment and really define in functional terms what the procurers or the contracting authorities really need within the context of their organization, so that you can design your products based on that and the services.
Yeah, thank you.
So Egil, sorry, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Egil Rakai. I'm also part of Converse. I'm in the business team, and I am economics procurement consultant there. That's it for now. And hoping for a fruitful discussion.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. And Kevin, are you here? Yes.
Yes, I am. I'm Kevin and your colleague, Tantan and Stefka.
Oh,
So-
I thought I knew you. Yes.
Yes. I've been working in Climate Geek for the last 5 years and a half, especially on activities related to Earth observation and space. And yeah, I'm looking forward to interesting discussion now. Thank you.
So thank you. So I think, in fact, to come back to Christoph's point. So in fact, in a way, the interactive discussion can be guided by some questions that we have prepared. It's true that those questions have been formulated more in a way that's oriented towards procurers, but I think that's okay. Let's play with that and really have this dialogue with all in the room on what we understand of that and how it can shed light, in particular in this challenge you have raised, Christoph, which is this gap between the supply and demand. So I think maybe let me just start with a short introductory element of answer to your question. So what do we mean by climate data? So I think there's definitely the part which is really on typically Earth observation data from space, and the part that is really qualified in terms of climate. So meaning how you distill from those observation data the elements that speak to classic indicators, so to speak, of climate adaptation. So whether it's quantitative measurements of estimating water reserves, etc. So I mean, that better than I do, so I don't build on that. There is another layer, of course, which is the non-EO sourced data. So that, of course, includes ground observation data, which are still quite normalized and so on. But there's also this grayer space of what is called traditional data, what is called historical data, but in the sense of cultural data. And I'm mentioning that, you may be very familiar with that, but I'm mentioning that because in many of the regions we're interacting with, the issues around the water in particular are very much handled at hyper-local levels, and that's in rural communities. And in those communities, in fact, the role of let's say what we call standardized and clean data is actually relatively small. So in fact, there's a lot of the adaptation strategies they're adopting, which are based on what you could call, whatever the terminology, traditional knowledge, the knowledge that farmers hold in particular. So, I mean, it sounds like a cliche, but that's very much the truth. And one of the challenges, of course, is whether you consider those as two different spaces that don't interact, or if in fact there are ways to combine data that are considered of good scientific and technical quality, and data which may not qualify at this point like that, but which still are paramount because they are the ones that local users trust. And so, and that situation does exist. So I think that's really part of the challenge. Then there is all this space, and that's a bit of a, to be transparent, it's a bit of a controversial space even in among people working on the topic, which is how much you integrate socioeconomic data into the realm of climate services. So there are schools of thought that say, well, that's a different space. It has to be addressed, but that shouldn't be mixed with physical data. And of course, there is another one which says, but in fact, the final user in many cases doesn't really care about the type and the origin of the data they're dealing with. And their problem is not even formulated in climate terms. I mean, in many cases, they if they have issues with water availability, the question of what is the climate mechanism behind it, and how do you measure the flows and so on, is secondary in a way. What they want to know is what is impact and what it creates in terms of tensions on the ground. And sometimes there are I borrow an example that came from a webinar that was organized by our colleagues from Corvus. There was a participant from the Netherlands who said, well, you had this situation in Limburg, I don't know if it was last year or a couple of years ago, where literally to irrigate the fields, they had to use drinking water. Which is, of course, it strikes anybody as an absurdity, but I mean, that's and that, is it just a physical and let's say a scientific issue? Yes and no. I mean, it is one, of course, because there's a a quantitative problem of availability, but there's also parameters such as what is considered acceptable quality for irrigation in the minds of people, and not just of the agronomists and the scientists. And the combination of that meant that the only available reserve of water that could be used was drinking water. And then you have these issues of how you can mitigate that, and what are sensible, economically sensible solutions to increase the amount of fresh water available. So I'm taking those examples. I think Stefka, you wanted to step in.
A little bit, because I was intrigued by this, by your idea of climate services. I realize that now we've passed through that, but it's. I don't know. I would be curious to hear also from you, Christoph, now or later, because it's.
I think it's now.
Climate data. I am not sure if climate data is climate data by default as created, or is it climate data because used for climate adaptation or mitigation or disaster risk solutions. But then I get very confused when people talk about, and I did it 5 minutes ago, and we talk about socio-economical data as non-climate data when we hear talking about data in the realm of climate services. Then it's I don't know,
yeah, I don't mind jumping in here. I mean, for me, climate data is everything that makes us depict climate change and its effects. It helps mitigate risks or do something good about preventing climate change to interact badly with mankind somehow. So, okay. And I mean, the world I come from is not the world of water quantity, taking your Limburg irrigation example, Tantam, but rather the water quality world. So algae blooms, for example, that of course are an effect of higher nutrient concentrations, which are in turn an effect of lower water levels, which are in turn an effect of warmer planet and temperatures. So I would say chlorophyll data, for example, is climate data in that sense. And it relates perfectly to whatever, also water availability, because once I have a big lake or something like that where I take drinking water from and I have a harmful algae bloom in there with cyanobacteria, I can't drink the water anymore. So this is also something. But the question is on me as a provider, these purchasers, how specific would they need my information? This is maybe something I would be interested in, because if I just say I deal with algae blooms and I can detect them, will they be in a technical state that they can say, okay, we need that in this and this and this resolution, or will they be able to discuss with me if we can differentiate gold algae from blue-green algae and stuff like that? This is my question.
Yes.
What are the needs of them in case I want to jump in on that level?
So yes, I think Ana-Lucia, yes.
Yeah. One of the main aspects in our workshops, we were discussing the challenge of water resilient solutions, and one of the main aspects is the quality of the water, enabled to actually connect the supply and demand, because you need to know the quality of the water or the components in the water in order to know if this is feasible to use in agriculture obviously this water can be used by the companies and the industry, so that you really connect supply and demand. Perhaps different quality of water, or I don't know, can be used for, and of course you cannot drink it, but you can use actually for irrigation or things like that. So understanding the different uses of water and the quality that the different uses need could help in the challenge that has been presented by the water companies, that is matching supply and demand, and really knowing what they can, how they can use, and for who can they use the water. Because they mentioned that, for example, in some cases there are water bans, and that the farmers cannot use water to irrigate the crops, but also water is actually wasted in some cases. So yeah, this is some of the examples they described in the workshop.
And also probably to complement what Ana Lucia said, and I mean, first of all, thank you really for bringing those questions on board, Christophe, because I think that's really that's really at the core of what we should be dealing with. So, of course, the short answer is in most of the cases the answer is no. I mean, the people that come to especially in their procurement departments, but even the ones who are dealing with water scarcity issues, they don't have this degree of knowledge. But I think it tells two things. So one, they don't have it in terms of understanding exactly what would be the implications of what you're describing to their challenge, and that's what Ana Lucia said. But I think it has also another dimension, which is that because they don't know that there is knowledge and expertise, and there are services available to deal with such parameters, they don't even factor them in their analysis of the demand. So, and I think, I'm trying to put it in not abstract terms, but I think that touches the point that it's very difficult when you ask, it can be a water company, but it can be a municipality or a region. When you ask them, what are your needs on climate services? What is your demand on climate services? In fact, they're not necessarily struggling to come up with needs they have, but they are struggling to answer the question because they have no idea at all of what is possible to address. So in fact, if you bring information like the one you're bringing, are you going to meet people who have already those questions in mind and said, "Oh, you are the provider I'm looking for because I have this concern about the rate of chlorophyll in my ponds"? It might be, but that's a bit random, But do you have will you have people who didn't look at it from that angle, and who didn't involve other teams in their organizations that are actually dealing with, for instance, the effects of droughts on rivers, on lakes, etc. That's actually a more realistic ask, because the answer in many cases will be no. They will have thought of other things such as irrigation for agriculture or availability of drinking water. And yet there are people who are much closer connected and who could make the link between what you are describing and those people who are dealing with water availability. If I can, and actually we have a bit of space to get into detail because of the number of people. So, for instance, now we're involved in a project with a region where there's going to be two demonstrators, and those are about water scarcity, and more specifically about how you can improve the management of the reserves of water without going to big infrastructures where you store, water for agriculture. Well, you heard about that. There's been even some turmoil around that in France, for instance. And so, in fact, there's in what they are exploring, there are solutions which deal with slowing down, the flow of water from canals or rivers to actually not to divert it from the natural environments, but actually to make sure that it is it mitigates the more and more chaotic availability of water in a longer season, and that the way it is stored is not creating other issues such as, in fact, the degradation of the quality of the water where it is stored. You know that in fact you don't mix low quality water with suitable water for a number of uses, and that is not done in a random way. And there, if you take this perspective, of course, what you're describing becomes massively important. But the knowledge you have is, before even you bring the solution, the knowledge you have is that those parameters may matter because of it, and they might impact not just the questions of people who are doing biological analysis of the waters, but in fact a much broader range of departments in a community, because that impacts a number of the usages there, and they didn't know that there was this implication and this link. So I think what it means is probably one that does what you are describing get into the scope and space of what we are discussing? I think the answer is yes. I mean, clearly. So it's not probably the parameters you described are not what climate scientists would describe as climate parameters, but they are absolutely relevant to the climate adaptation topics we're dealing with. And two, is it useful to engage in a dialogue in a PCP, for instance? I would say yes, not in the sense of direct sales and saying, well, I'm here to address exactly those precise technical demands you have, but in terms of increasing the understanding of the demand side about why those parameters matter and what they interact with in their understanding of the water scarcity challenges. Does it make sense? I think that 90% of the people who are in charge of water scarcity in a region or a municipality might not even have any awareness of the topics you're talking about. I might be pessimistic, but
the question is again, or no, not again, a new question that comes up is, who are the buyers, right? I mean, if the buyer is somebody that owns a lake which is used for drinking water production, like a municipality or something like that, and they are in charge of taking care of the water quality being good, he might be very interested in our solution. Yeah. If the buyer is somebody who wants to, whatever, look for the whole state of California, for example, for the water supply, like Californian, whatever, water agency, I don't know how they are structured there in terms, then we might not have the right solution, as we are more on, lakes with a certain size. And so we could be part of a solution of this overall network, which would be more a digital twin or something like that, being built from various data sources, but we would not be bold enough to go into this call and say, we can provide everything from salinity to water levels to water extent. We could probably deliver water extent and chlorophyll and some effects on water quality and inorganic absorption and stuff like that, but we would probably not be able to and provide the full system. So the question is, who is the buyer there? Will both buyers, the one who just is responsible for one lake, this one municipality, and the other buyer, full state, be in there? Will I just encounter the small ones, the big ones, both? And how should I address my solution then? I mean, how honest should I be with my solution, particularly if we are in this pre-commercial procurement, where I can basically say everything that's important, everything that's possible on an innovation perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, even if I just measure chlorophyll, I can say, okay, I will do R&D with you, and in a year or so, I will be able to also get water extent, water levels, and stuff like that being extracted.
Yeah, no,
so this is a lot to think about, but this is just what is driving me.
No, but all of this is completely relevant, I think. So I will maybe give it a go, but and Lucia, please step in also. So So one on the types of buyers. So I mean the consortia of buyers are being built up right now. I think the scale tends to be more city level or small community level than the state of California so far.
Yeah, maybe these are two very extreme examples. Maybe the truth
yes,
can
but
also
it's
be in between.
but it's good to clarify the scale. So I think so. So that means, and then when you say city, of course, it can be. It depends which type of cities. I mean, there are some who might find this very marginal and they just happen to have a pond somewhere that nobody cares about. But there are others for which that is much more central because of the structure. So, so I think the short answer is that there may be buyers in the consortia who are interested in the scale you're speaking about. That's one thing. Second thing is in terms of the whether their interest is there already and explicit or is not there. So in some cases it may be there because indeed if they have they may very well have an issue with lakes, especially with I mean I know some examples where they have issues with the drafts where they realize that this is just changing a body of water from the freshwater category to just not, just wastewater category. So, I mean, some of them are aware of that. Others, I think they could be interested beyond the fact that you contribute to a digital twin, because there is a vagueness in the understanding of what is actually the freshwater available in my territory at a point in time. And it's not just a matter of measurement, but I think it's also where do I look? So in fact, there are if they can know that there is precisely this gray zone on that means that a number of water bodies are going to qualify for a range of usages, as Ana Lucia said, at a point in time. But if you have a threat from coming from drought or whatever, they might go into the red zone at some point, and that impacts the global availability of fresh water on the territory. Then it matters for them, and they may not know that we have that there is a capacity to know that. So if you contribute only to well, it's already something, of course, but if you contribute to a digital twin, yes, you make the data available, but you don't necessarily raise the awareness that those data are actually relevant to the topic of freshwater availability. You see what I mean? So in that sense, I don't think, but again, really, Ana Lucia, and again, I do step in. I don't think that's necessarily, if you contribute to this dialogue, you would have your interest would be to come up with the full range of technologies you have as such. I mean, so you might not find a buyer, immediately through this process. It's not, a PCP is not meant for that exactly. But what you may be able to do is actually to, raise this kind of literacy, and also in a dialogue, understand yourself, in fact, to which extent the data you have are relevant to what challenges, because you may not know, but they may not know either. And it's maybe in this dialogue that, in fact, that surfaces with more really.
Again, question.
Yes.
I see two hands being raised, but again, a question. The question is, you are talking about the data that I have. Is it the data that I have the customer is interested, or
No.
let's say my technical ripeness and my view on how far I can develop it?
It's more the latter. Yes, you're right. It's more the
Thank
latter.
you. Yeah. Because I mean, I can also jump in with data, but I always understood that this is not the case. Of course, I can also tell a story. I can also tell a story that reads like I present. I do some research that I already have done. But this is then something where I will probably not match the customer needs, because they have also some expectations and where things develop.
No,
it's complicated. Okay.
No, but it's more the latter. I mean, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Stefka, and then Ana Lucia.
So it's a very interesting discussion for me, and it's just to let you know where I'm coming from. I do have some experience before ClimateKey as Earth observation consultant. So I've worked a lot on the Copernicus uptake, and I've worked a little bit, but a bit intensely on the uptake of water quality data, in particular by public authorities for for reporting under the Water Framework Directive, which I know that at the time was like one of the things that EUMAP as well was providing, or at least interested in.
So have you been responsible for the full Atlantic and North Sea and East Sea Sentinel-3 monitoring network?
No, I wasn't.
things?
I was in a consultancy, so we were employed in different projects by ESA or the European Commission to see what was the problem of expanding the use of uptaking Copernicus data for water quality, mostly inland in Europe. So in doing that, I had to, and I was interested in talking with as many authorities as I can and ask them why don't you do that if it's easier for you, how we have to start, how it could be potentially cheaper in the long term and everything. And very often people just don't want to talk about that. They have the way they want to do they need to do things. It's outside of their mandate. It's they're not obliged to use that it's not in the reference method, so there's no obligation for them to do that. And it's but even there was a very, very big discrepancy between the people that were even willing to get into discussions with that. And everywhere that we saw, because my data probably dates a couple of years back, but back in the days, I think it was at state level, it was only Finland and another Nordic country using actually satellite Copernicus data for reporting on that. It may have changed, but probably not.
No, it's still the same. It's still Finland, and they are also not doing it like that. It's hard for them. They always need to prove that their methods are in line with whatever. So it's not easy.
No,
so
it's not easy.
You're absolutely right. There's
still
no legislation that enables us for the reporting works in the EU Water Framework Directive to use satellite remote sensing methods. This is true.
So some of the stakeholders I was talking to, well, it's not there. So I cannot even. I'm a public authority. I cannot even ask money for that if it's not there, because no one would approve this money to buy satellite data to employ people to ask to pay for my time to ask a satellite person what does satellite data do. But I think that's it's the whole. It's the whole structure of the Copernicus uptake, or the lack of satellite data uptake, or the way I want to talk it is that it's aimed at public procurers, public buyers, and public authorities are often not interested into that. So I've always seen this very huge discrepancy of what is on the market and what are people looking for. And since I moved to Climate Geek, I just realized that people don't really know what they need. They all the time tell you, oh, go talk to the client, but the client doesn't really necessarily know what they need. So I think that just my take into that is that I think that people that are probably already putting their mind into pre-commercial procurement or any other type of co-creation solutions where, for instance, the service provider is involved at a very early stage, then yes, it's you, the person that goes and tell them, I can do this and this and that. And yes, some people would certainly get scared from, oh my God, they mentioned data, I need to run out of the room, because it's how people think. But I think it already shows some interest on behalf of them. And I'm not saying it's going to work all the time. We have heard about pre-commercial procurements where they had some support to write the technical terms, but they didn't have the support to see if what was delivered to them in terms of data was matching these technical terms, because they didn't have anyone in-house that could tell them what that was or what that wasn't. All this to say is that, at least I'm assuming, but I tend to be sometimes more hopeful than I should be, is that at least pre-commercial procurement, same as other co-development methods, at least it's another way. And we've tried differently. We've tried just like going to a public authority or going to an entity and not understanding what they do. So I think it's really this golden messy middle where we could try to explore. And then I'm far from being a salesperson. I cannot tell you what you should tell them and what you shouldn't. But it's at least they should be more open to listen than in a standard.
I think from a sales perspective, and this makes it very interesting. This was a reason why I'm here today. I think climate change could be a driver besides annual regulatories for the authorities to bring these things further and to do things that are nowadays nice to have things for them, like monitoring all the water bodies on their ground or something like that. Doing these things really in a serious fashion in order to be able to relate in the end to the public. The question is how the politics in Europe develop. I think with more and more Filoni's in Italy. This is a very political statement now. We won't go to that point because as long as climate change is not important to politics, and this is more on the right-wing parties, then we might not have a good business case. But as long as people vote for parties that are interested in climate change, I think we will have a good leverage here. So I think it's good to start and use this climate change. And once politics develop in the right way, so to say, in terms of having a better climate, don't want to influence anybody, I think that legislation will come on that. I think like the Water Framework Directive in 10 years or so, we will have a climate law that will make us monitor in a certain way events that occur in the nature in order to follow up on these things and in order to prove that certain targets are fulfilled on a local base also. But this is maybe too much on the opinion level, but I mean, the discussion is good, and I think yeah, I felt like I could do this statement.
No, I definitely agree with you. Maybe I'll pass the floor to Ana Lucia, who had her hand raised.
Yeah, sorry for that. Sorry for me.
No worries, no worries. Katja, just very quickly, you were asking about who is the procurer or who can you sell the solution. In the case of the Netherlands, for example, you have Headwaterschapshuis that they procure for the different water boards, for example, and they also perform research in that regard. So that's one thing. And from the perspective of pre-commercial procurement, we also want to gather and aggregate this demand based on these challenges. And in that sense, we think that especially for the challenge of water, the cross-border approach is very important because you have river basins, you have water crossing across borders. So that's why we want to have different contracting authorities in the water sector also, being part of this challenge. And for them, definitely the quality of the water analysis is important as one of the components of a bigger challenge. That's yeah.
And I think from a European perspective, crossing borders, and this is very important, you have with the satellite observations, although it's never in any regulatories now, a very synoptical method. So the sensor is in Spain measuring the same parameter as in Lithuania, so to say. I mean, with no regards if this fits then perfectly to any in situ values or something like that, but the values are comparable. You can say, oh, it's worse here than there because of whatever. So in the synoptical view on climate change, it could also be worthwhile. Of course, then it's more the European Union you need to target than a Spanish, whatever, drinking water producer or something like that.
And it's going to become more and more important to have this approach cross-border. That was it from my side.
I think that I know we're coming to a close, but that was that was a very good conversation. I think even I hope it was useful for you as well, Christopher.
No, it was. I mean, thank you all. It was very exclusive for me also.
That's not by design.
Thank you for bringing up water quality. It's always a pleasure.
Being here, and yeah, I mean, yeah, I think I needed to do a little bit to be open here in order to express what we do, and for me it was a good insight in what you guys think about pre-commercial procurement, what the opportunities are, and I think I have a better picture now on that. I will definitely follow up more on the project webinars, although we as a company decided to not pitch now for this Horizon call for the 19 million, because we think that we are currently trying to our strategy is different, so to say. We need some quick cash.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I would have to leave you now for another meeting. Sorry for that. Have a good time.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah,
but this is how I would position here. So thanks again, and I'm very happy to take on more project opportunities and to dive in that. I'm sure that another opportunity for us to pitch will come, and then I will be well prepared.
It's not really necessarily related to the pitching. We did have some pitching sessions, but it's so the way pre-commercial procurement works is that there are it's pretty much a group of procurers. So at this stage, first the group of procurers needs to be formed. Then within this your EC code, they will be the one bidding for it. So I think in theory, it is then when they onboard potential service developers. So you may still have the opportunity to follow the code and what happens with that. This being said, by pitching or not, there may be.
That's true. I mean, we can also pitch directly on the Horizon call,
yes.
on the Horizon call without being in the project consortium.
No, you cannot. I don't think you can be part of the of the consortium for the Horizon call. Sorry for not being precise. If you're not a public body, am I
Yes,
wrong?
Yeah.
No,
But
yes,
then
if
they
I
would
may-
be looking for solutions potentially like yours.
Or I can pitch. I think what I understood is I can pitch together with a public authority and they being the lead or something like that. I think this is possible.
Formally not. Informally, it's always good that they're aware of what is on the market and of what you can present.
Yes. I mean, another way to say the same is in fact that, I mean, you could, but if you did that, you would actually cut yourself from what is most interesting for you, which is the So in fact, you can be part of the dialogue, and you can't be part. Well, you shouldn't, I think, be part of the consortium because that's not your interest. I mean, your
this is what we realized. I mean, we were in all these calls and listened to everything, and then we had a decision. And this was not a 90-10 decision; it was a 60-40 thing. So some were like, yeah, we go for it, and some were like, oh no, we don't. So
you still have plenty of time to see how that evolves and if there's
exactly. And this will also be interesting to
Mm-hmm.
follow up on this Horizon. What is it? 06 or number call?
I think 05.
Or 5,
yes.
and then figure out what comes out of it, and read the reports, and then decide for the next time to be to work on that or not. Yeah.
Probably what I would say, and it's I mean, it's for you, but I mean more generally for anybody who would see this, is that in fact the question of whether you should be part of a consortium for the PCP call is probably pretty clear. We don't see the point, I mean, for a provider to be part of a consortium. But then once the consortium of buyers is selected, as Stefka said, with a certain challenge, then I think it's a good question for you or for any provider to think, well, is it worth actually engaging in the process with the selected consortium to be part of this dialogue, knowing that it's not going to bring you quick money. I mean, it's not going to be a direct sales process. But what it can do definitely is, as we discussed today, I mean, raise the awareness of what the possibilities and also the questions you hold, are, and to bring it to the awareness to a substantial set of procurers, and then that not so indirectly can create a broader space for. So I think the benefit for SMEs like yours to engage in there is one that you put what you're doing in the map beyond your obvious market, I would say, so and that in fact it also gives you some insight into where the demand might be evolving towards, and then maybe that, and maybe in the case if you find that you also touch another point when you said, well, you as a company wouldn't be providing all of the information that the state of California needs, but I mean, it's even questionable whether the ideal outcome is that one company is going to address the full demand of the consortium. It could very well be in combination, in fact, of
no. I mean, this is how a consortium works in the end, as a consortium. But as myself with a small solution in that part, and being alone, not in a consortium. My question. This was my question. How can I?
No, but I think that is pretty clear. I think that is pretty clear.
And fully understood.
Yes.
But I mean, also when I follow up this whatever 05, 06, 15 call, don't just can't recall this number. I can also see who is in there, and I mean, it's not forbidden to approach these people afterwards. Yeah.
No, of course, yeah. I mean, doesn't. Yeah. And maybe just a final comment from me, and I know we are over time, and Stefka is going to cut my mic, but I think on your statement before that, and not necessarily getting into the statement itself, but because it is also something we really observe more and more, which is that even though we for instance, as an organization, where our focus is really action towards climate change, but we do acknowledge that a lot of this action is going to happen through in a co-benefit approach. So it's going to happen through stakeholders who are not primarily motivated by climate action. So of course, if there is denial, then it's quite a bit more difficult. But a lot of the actors are not initially coming to us, and at least not coming to us with a climate question. But in fact, they're more concerned about, well, it seems that maybe climate change might impact some of what I care about.
We are in capitalism. It's always a commercial reason behind it. That's true.
Yes, also, and even for politics, but it's not necessarily, well, whether it's good or bad in absolute terms, that's another debate. But but we do realize that those levers, which for us are maybe secondary levers, are probably underused. I mean, and so and that also means, I think, for companies, service providers in particular, that probably means that having this double lens, of
yeah, of
there
course.
could be
I
demand
mean,
which doesn't come
if
from climate
efficiency,
change.
money savings, this is always something also we try to
Yeah, of course,
bring on,
but-
but this is this. But I agree, this could be stressed more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's what we're trying to do, to actually
Also
bring them
in
more
your
explicit together.
presentations as a feedback, you could highlight this more. If you have your 1, 2, 3, 4 fire, floods, and all these kind of things, you could also always have the nature, ecologic, socioeconomic aspects, and then the bare economic aspects or benefits for certain buyers in the end.
Yes.
It's very difficult to
Highlighted.
calculate.
Yeah, I know.
It is very important. Maybe by highlighting the other benefits, we could also hint into the fact that there are some many benefits as well, but it's quantifying them would be a whole other beast.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. I thank you a lot for this very exclusive opportunity to talk to you.
Likewise, thank you. I did learn a lot today.
Yeah, you also have my contact data now. I think we can keep in touch, and hopefully
You
we'll
have
see
my
it.
email as well.
Yeah, we will see each other at the one or other event
Looking forward.
with ESA
Thank you for contributing.
Yeah, thank you very much,
Thank you.
and thanks for the well-organized meeting. Bye bye.
Likewise,
you.
bye.